Hi.
Are you really wearing a Houston Comets jersey?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. Oh, how are you, Pepper? I'm Val.
good. I'm good. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you
Um,
too. Thank you so much for sending me the note and so psyched to hear what you're doing. This is exciting.
I'm really excited to be talking with you. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm really grateful for all of your contributions to the WNBA. That the means so much to me. I mean,
Good.
I think it's been really impactful in my life to grow up being able to see women
Mhm.
professional basketball players and not only seeing men professional basketball players because it lets me kind of see myself in the place where I want to be because I want to play in the WNBA
Mhm.
when I grow up. And over the past summer, just covering the league, especially with its like super out there activism last year, was a really amazing experience for me. All right. Well, if you're ready, we can get started.
Sounds good.
All right, awesome. So, my first question for you is when did your love of basketball come from?
Wow. So take me back. Like you, I got into basketball when I was a young girl. When I was growing up, there weren't many chances for girls to play sports. In my hometown, I grew up in New Jersey, not far from Trenton. And so I was really lucky because my dad was a basketball coach and a referee, and he became an athletics director. And so he was my ticket. We played basketball in my driveway. We had a big hoop set up on one end of the driveway, and I would shoot baskets all the time. We actually had a tree near the hoop, and I would hang up. I had a lantern that was on a big long electrical cord that I plugged in to the garage, and this lantern hung on a branch of the tree. And because I had light at night, I could shoot baskets deep into the darkness, and that's really how I was able to sort of nurture my love for the game, shooting hoops, playing with kids in the neighborhood in the driveway. And then my first chance to play on a team, believe it or not, wasn't until I got to high school when I was in ninth grade, because there were no teams for girls in my town. But I started loving it as a kid, and that just led to this lifelong connection to the game.
Wow. You talked about high school, so I wanna go a little bit farther. What was it like to be one of the first women to earn an athletic scholarship to UVA?
Really exciting. I mean, it was a dream come true to be able to go to this great school that had a great reputation for academics, had a women's basketball team, frankly, that was just getting off the ground and did not, as you noted, didn't really have a lot of scholarship help to go around. So I was lucky to get to share the first women's basketball scholarship at UVA. It was actually the second one, but the player who had the first one transferred. It's a long story. But we were definitely on the ground floor there and weren't very good early on. So that was hard. Losing games is always tough, but it was a great experience to be, one of the first to get that chance. And the good news is we got better every year I was there, and winning sort of is a great experience. And so the combination of playing basketball and getting to go to this great school was, again, really a dream come true for me.
Wow, now let's get into a little bit of your after college career. What was your experience like being president of USA Basketball?
Well, that was a great, leadership opportunity for me. I had been on their board of directors for many years. First, working on I spent 8 years working for the NBA, and so my role with USA Basketball was specific to the men's team for a while. And then when we started the WNBA, my role sort of shifted, and my board spot with USA Basketball changed. But it was a great organization to be part of. USA Basketball is in charge of the Olympic team, so it's a different role in the basketball world than the pros or the colleges have. And the national team is really special. It's the team that represents our country in international competitions like the Olympics. And so it was really cool, frankly, to be working in that area. And I got to travel a lot in that job, went to a lot of different countries to see basketball games and to be part of that national team effort. So it was really fun. And to be finally have a chance to be the chair, the board chair, which was really the function of the president, was really an honor, and was glad I had a chance to be associated with that organization for more than 2 decades.
And you mentioned a little bit of your role in the NBA, and you were in the room when the decision to create the WNBA was finalized. What can you tell us about that decision making process?
Well, it took a long time to get to that point. I was involved, as you said, I was at the NBA for many years, and we had a committee, an internal committee that we formed. I think it was back in like 1994 or five. David Stern was the commissioner of the league at that time, and he really was the force that convinced NBA owners to invest in this women's NBA. So he was really important to this effort. I had the honor of working for David, and again was involved in an internal committee that was examining women's basketball back in the 90s, so 25 years ago. And it wasn't where it was today, Pepper. It was just really in a different place. I mean, the colleges were playing and high school girls were getting to play, but you really didn't have the elite players with this chance to play the game in front of fans and be on television in the way the men had. So it was really exciting that the NBA, David and the owners took such a strong interest in getting behind that. And it was really left to our internal committee to figure out, okay, if we were going to do a league, when would we play? How many teams would we have? Where would we get the players from? How would we deal with television and referees and uniforms and all those details? So that was a long process to work all of that out. But the good news is the decision, was made. We launched after the Olympics in 1996, so we had a really good, like preview of what the top players could do. And then in 1997, 25 years ago, basically 25 seasons ago, we were able to launch, and really we haven't looked back if you look at sort of where women's sports has come from there.
Yeah, well, what does it mean to you to have been a part of the creation of one of the most successful professional sports leagues?
Well, it was a dream job. I was a president for 8 years and worked with some amazing people, got to see some incredible athletes, of course. I mean, I love that you're wearing the Houston Comets jersey. Oh my gosh. The Comets was our champion. You probably know this because I know you know everything about the league. Our champion the first 4 years, led by the great Cheryl Swoops, Cynthia Cooper, Tina Thompson, Van Chancellor was their coach, the great Janeth Arcane, our great player from Brazil. So many others were involved in that, in that great dynasty. And so to see the excitement that that team in particular generated in those early years, and the great job that those players did was, I'll never forget it, to be honest. These were really memories for a lifetime, to go through something like that. And then just, proud that we were able to do something important, because I really do think women's team sports came of age in our country in the 90s with the launch of the WNBA, the predecessor leagues to the National Women's Soccer League, what was happening at the Olympics. It really was a golden era for women's team sports at the highest level in the USA. And yeah, absolutely, to be part of that at the beginning stages was really special.
Now, I know you talked a little bit about the nitty gritty stuff and all of the things that go into creating a league, but once it was started, how did you connect with corporate partners, sports networks, etc.?
That was sort of a day in and day out process to keep up the good communication with them. I mean, TV is so important to a sports league. It gives you a chance to be seen, by people like you, for example. Most people watch games on television. They don't get to go in person. So having a really good TV situation is really important for a young league. And we were lucky because we had 3 networks that supported the league in the early years. We had NBC, ESPN, and Lifetime, which was a women's network that had a really different kind of a reach. And then sponsors are so important to any sports organization. They not only provide funding, but they also promote you. They produce television commercials, and they do sort of, they do events at games to just try to get people more engaged. and more interested in the games themselves. So sponsors and television really make a sports league run. And we were lucky that we had such great support in the early years. And, your goal when you're running a league is to make them happy. You want their support to continue. And so the good news is, the NBA, WNBA have always had really strong relationships with their business partners. And, that was certainly the case on the men's side. And the WNBA became, no exception to that. So all that was, again, to your point, critically important in the early success of the league.
And let's go a little bit back to, we talked a little bit about this before, to when you were a staff attorney for the NBA. Can you just explain to me what exactly is a staff attorney and what you did in that role?
Well, a staff attorney is another way of saying a young lawyer at the league. When I joined the NBA, the league office was much smaller than it is today. I mean, now it's, I don't know, probably 1,000 people. When I started, it was less than 100. So all the departments were much smaller than they are probably today. I was the first woman lawyer hired by the NBA, and our legal department was only 4 people. So I got to do a lot of different things. The business was just growing. I did a lot of work having to do with the NBA's collective bargaining agreement with its players. So we had to approve trades and we had to approve player contracts when they got signed, among other things. So it was really exciting to be close to basketball in that job. And I worked very closely with people from the teams for the NBA basketball operations department. I worked on a lot of contracts with other work I did. I was in a lot of meetings. I was on a lot of phone calls. I got to travel around a little bit. But, the NBA even then was very lawyer oriented. I mean, the commissioner, David Stern, liked to surround himself with lawyers because he knew they understood how to get certain things done. And so I was around smart people in that role, of course. And it really was a launching pad for me to go on to other jobs at the league. So it was a great experience.
I know you mentioned working on some of the NBA CBAs, so I was wondering, like, what are your thoughts on the WNBA's recent CBA?
Well, it sounds very exciting. I mean, anytime you have a long-term deal, that's a good thing. It means you have what they call labor peace, and sort of the likelihood of no disruption in the season, which sometimes happens when owners and players have to make an agreement on important subjects like salaries and benefits and how free agency works in the case of sports league. And so the fact that they have an agreement that both sides are happy with and have agreed to have for a long time is a really good thing. I worked on the first 2 CBAs for the WNBA. And so it was very different issues back then, very different types of concerns. But fortunately, we were able to make deals as well with our players, which kept labor peace going for the league, which is a good thing. And so the fact again that the players and the league are seeing eye to eye right now on important topics is itself just a huge victory. And I'm just really happy for both because it means that the kinds of cooperation and sense of partnership that you need to make a league successful is there. So that's a real positive.
Yeah, well, speaking of players, how did you decide on Lisa Leslie, Rebecca Lobo, and Cheryl Swoops to be the focal points for the league?
Yeah, well, they were great ones. I mean, I have to say that, as you know, they were two of our three of our early stars for the league when the league launched. All three were members of the 1996 Olympic women's basketball team, which really, their success paved the way for the launch of the WNBA the following summer. And all three were involved in that. So we had some continuity there. People knew them. They knew that they were great players. They had great name recognition. They were popular. And they were all just amazing ambassadors, really, for the league. And so they really were absolutely the right women to put out there to sort of herald the launch of this new league. And we had all three of them involved with us in that period where the league was, doing our preparatory work. We were doing promotion before the league launched in the summer of 97. And we were using them for appearances and photo shoots and the like. So they were just truly among the best players at that time. There were other great ones for sure, but they were among the best of the best. And again, perfect choices for us, to use so that we could bring attention to the league before it actually launched.
Well, I'm sure you're not surprised by the impact of the current WNBA's activism. So, what are your thoughts on the WNBA's activism?
Well, it's really powerful when the athletes themselves are using their voices, which are powerful, to take a stand or deliver an important message that has nothing to do with sports. That nexus between sports and society, I think has been there for a really long time. And the NBA always identified that and recognized it and tried to, make that a focal point for their business. So it's not a surprise, to be honest, that the WNBA is, it was sort of with similar DNA is using athlete voices to, deliver important messages societally. So it was very heartening to see the players, so strong, particularly as it relates to racial and social justice last summer, which was an important topic really for our entire country. And many sports organizations were trying to use their platforms to deliver the importance of equality and respect and tolerance and equity, in our country. And so I was really happy to see the WNBA do it and do it so successfully. And now, that seems now to be an attribute that's so closely associated with their brand in a really positive way. And so what'll be interesting to me is to see where they go from here. How they can keep that, that messaging, that sense of what's important alive and powerful, and sort of where they take it now to the next, to the next level. I think that'll be really interesting to see how that unfolds this summer and beyond.
Definitely. Well, I think we'll both be sure to look out for the continued importance of the WNBA's activism. Let's get back to your career a little bit. In your current role as Big East Commissioner, what do you do to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, it's been a very difficult year for everybody in the sports world, certainly for our country, and college sports, no exception. We just concluded the Big East basketball season. We had tournaments recently where we crowned champions for our conference. The University of Connecticut, a great women's basketball program, I might add, on the women's side, has produced many stars playing in the WNBA now. And then on the men's side, Georgetown University, led by the great Patrick Ewing, a former NBA great and Hall of Famer, were our two Big East champions. March Madness is upon us, which is one of the best times of the year, in my judgment, in the basketball world. And dealing with COVID was really hard, Pepper. I mean, we had so many meetings throughout the year. We were dealing with doctors and infectious disease specialists, and we had working groups going to make sure we understood the science, what we were supposed to be doing in terms of testing, how the travel would work. We were in 11 different jurisdictions, and you had travel restrictions to and from one state to another. How to deal with contact tracing if someone were to test positive, who else was affected by that, how to deal with our referees. The NCAA was helpful. They had their own doctors who were giving us advice. So it was really, to be honest, exhausting working through all the issues. But the good news is in basketball, we had a season where we played most of our games. Our athletes were happy to play. I mean, that was important to them, to be able to have the chance to go out there and do what they love. And so we were glad we were able to continue to make that opportunity available to them. And so, we have a little bit left of basketball. We have our spring sports are coming up. And my hope is that come next fall, when colleges and universities start up again, we will have put the worst of this behind us, that the vaccine will be out there, that young people will have it in their arms, and that come next fall, we'll have more of a normal year in college sports than we had this year. That's our goal. And hopefully, based on the medical reports and prognoses we're getting from the experts, it looks like that's likely to happen, which is great.
Yes, definitely. My mom got the vaccine and my dad's getting it tomorrow. So, just getting to hear your perspective on the importance of safety and like COVID protocols at college is really interesting. Now, we've talked about the WNBA's activism, but what are you doing to support Big East players' activism this season?
Well, this past season, we did a number of things. We had formed a working group a couple of years ago to talk about what we as a conference could do in the area of diversity and inclusion, critically important. We focused on how we can improve our hiring so we have more women, Black and brown people, groups of all kind represented at decision-making tables within our conference. We've been working hard on education, particularly for our student athletes. They're hungry to know more about what they can do, how they can become leaders while they're on their campuses and when they leave in making the world a better place. We have a few partnerships with outside groups that we've supported and entered into to that end. We were pretty active with voting registration back in the fall, particularly because our student athletes wanted to make sure they were voting. They wanted other people to vote, so we were helpful there. We have been supportive of the Black Lives Matter movement for the past several months. In fact, on all of our uniforms this year, our men's and women's players were wearing BLM patches as our way of showing support for that very important, again, movement. And now we're kind of working on, what's going to be next, both for our conference office, which isn't very big. We've only got about 20 people that work in the conference office. But then our schools, we have 11 schools, are, very active on their own campuses. And our philosophy is what can we do to bring them together so that we can sort of, collectively do more as a group than any one of them might be able to do individually. And so it's a combination, again, of proving hiring, education, and then awareness, using the platforms that we have to, again, try to do more. And it is my hope that, our society in general can make some progress in an area that means so much to our strength as a nation. So we'll, more to come on that, but we have been busy this past year trying to do our part.
Well, let's move back to talking a little bit about the WNBA. What are your thoughts on the growth of the league over its almost 25 years of existence?
It's been exciting to see it when we launched the league, and it has grown, to your question. When we launched the league in 97, for example, we only had 8 teams. We were just starting out. We had great players back then, but there weren't as many really great players then, I think, as there are now. Now you look at the rosters, the players are just more skilled and, for the most part, although again, we had great players. The rosters are deeper. You see, you know, um, sort of it's actually what I'm told, it's very hard to make a team now because there's so many good players and there's only 12 teams. So the quality of play is terrific. Um, the leagues now withstood the test of time in an important way. When we started out, we knew it was going to be a marathon and not a sprint for the league to sort of demonstrate its staying power. It wasn't going to be an overnight process. I think, in terms of what happens now, the league, can and will and needs to grow. I mean, it needs to bring in more fans. That good things happen when there's more people in the stands, when there's more people watching on television. That's what makes sponsors more interested and television networks more interested. And I believe that can happen. The league, I think, has done a really good job of sort of firming up its uniqueness, in part because of all the things it does off the court and all the things its players and the league stand for. And so I think the future remains really bright. And, as long as our country enjoys sports and as long as people are supportive of women as the focal point of sports, I think the league is in best possible position to be the kind of long-term success that the NBA has been.
Well, it seems super challenging to create a professional sports league, and as someone who was the WNBA president for the league's first 8 years, what were the challenges of establishing the WNBA?
Well, there were many. I mean, it was a lot of work just to get the league off the ground. We had a to-do list, and it seemed every day instead of crossing things off, we were crossing things off, but we were adding 10 more. So there was a lot of work to do to establish the teams. Make sure we had players on the teams. Little things like we didn't have a basketball design. We had to figure out what the uniforms were. We had to find referees. The teams had to find coaches. They had to sell tickets to games. Um, we had to pick team names. And so there were so many things that we had to take care of. Some of them you only have to do once. Others of those you have to do every year. But we had a great team of people working on this at the NBA. Hundreds of people were involved in the early years. And there was just a real sense of purpose. We knew we were doing something exciting and important. So everybody pulled together and made it a big group effort. So it was a lot of hard work for sure. And even in the early years, a job like that involves a lot of work, a lot of weekends. You have to work because games are mostly on weekends. We played this summer. So for me, that was a bit challenging because I had small children, and summer is kind of when you want to have some time off to be with your kids. It wasn't so easy for me with a league that was playing in the summer months. So that part was hard. But again, we had a great group of people who were very committed to this. And those years, I think for everybody who was involved early on, probably among the most exciting years that you could imagine in your career, and feel lucky that we were able to be a part of that.
Well, now you are part of the WNBA's 25th season advisory council. What are you hoping to do as a part of that council?
Well, we've had a couple of calls so far. I was glad to be, invited to participate. Very happy that the league was so serious about recognizing the history, of the league and some of the people who were involved, some of the players who were involved in those early years. I think it was really a wonderful gesture. Um, I've kind of sat back and listened to some great ideas, and there are many that the league will be implementing this summer. I think my role and the role of some of these others who were around at the beginning were really to communicate what it was like, to tell the story a bit about both the highs and the lows we had getting the league off the ground. And I'm looking forward later on in the year. Hopefully we can bring back hopefully we can have a party at some point. We really need a reunion to bring back some of these early, exactly, folks who are involved. But hopefully when that point comes, hopefully I can be a liaison with some of the people who worked at the league office and at our teams, whether they were, front office personnel or coaches or referees or others who network executives, sponsors. I mean, there were so many people, again, who took this so seriously and gave so much of themselves to make the league a success that hopefully we can bring everybody back into a room at one point and have a big celebration.
Well, I would definitely
Hope
want
you
to.
can come. We'll invite you if we have that party.
What do? Oh my god, that would be awesome. All right. Well, I have two last questions for you. Why do you think the WNBA is still important 25 years later?
Well, it's a great game. I mean, it's a great product, so to speak, to use corporate speak here. It's a game that people like to watch. Teams that people want to be associated with and follow, players that people want to watch, and so many young girls especially look up to. I mean, those are the kinds of things that make sports leagues happen, make them stick around. So they've got all the ingredients, for that. And then I think it's really a testament to the power of women and girls. When I was a young girl growing up, I didn't have a WNBA to look up to. It just was unthinkable that there could be a league, like that back in the 60s and the 70s. I mean, Title IX had to get passed in order for girls like you and me to have more opportunities to play sports. So the fact that our society has changed in a good way, I think is part of the reason, that the league is finally getting its due. People know, women and girls they're sort of the secret weapon here in our country. And the fact that we're now more willing to celebrate them and their achievements and honor them, I think, is another reason why the league is kind of come into its own here and reason why it has a bright future ahead.
When you see the W today, what makes you smile most?
I think people like seeing the smile it brings to other people's faces and the joy it unleashes, in the people who are at games and who feel so passionate about it. I mean, that's the best part of sports. It releases so much emotion in all of us. It makes us smile when our teams win. It makes us sad when our teams lose. So I think, I saw that in the beginning. It was amazing early on, really, how many people were into the league. Maybe not in the numbers today, but there were so many. And so to see that continuing and to see the joy that it's producing is really, I think, the best part.
Well, I've learned so much from you today about the WNBA, the history of the league, and your career, and I feel so honored to have that knowledge now. I'm so grateful that you were able to join me today, and thank you so much for coming.
Pepper, thank you for having me. This has been so fun. Brought back a lot of memories, my friend. Thanks for all you're doing here. Hopefully, we're going to see you out on the WNBA court one day. That'll be great.
Oh
I'll
yes,
remember this day when
definitely,
that happens.
definitely when the pandemic starts to open stuff back up, I will definitely be there watching the WNBA games, and I'll hope to see you there in the arenas.
Sounds great, my friend. Thanks so much for having me again. You
Thank
take
you so
care.
much. Big thanks to Val Ackerman for making that amazing conversation happen. I learned so much about the history of the WNBA, and I hope that you did too. As always, you can find me on Instagram at DishWithPepper and on Twitter at Team Pursley. Thank you all for listening.